All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 4.1 notes. We're not going to do number 2 here. We're not going to do or number 4, but I want you to copy number 1 down and number 3, exactly what you see with the boxes. And then, so pause the video right now, do that, and then come back, and I'm going to do numbers 1 and 3 with you. This will be a little bit of a review, and I know a lot of you can do this right now. This is from 7th grade. But if it looks unfamiliar to you, it's okay. We're going to review it. So I'm going to do number 1 and 3 with you. I just need you to copy it in your notes, and then when we put the answers in and show you how to do it, you'll have a good example on how to start. Go ahead and do that right now. Copy those and then unpause it and come back, and I'll be ready to go. All right, so now we're ready to go. You got these copied in your notes. If you don't, pause it right now and copy number 1 and number 3 in your notes. All right, so all this is asking is to plug numbers in and go. So they're giving us x. So if we make x, see, it shows that it's one problem, but it's 4 mini problems in itself. So I can take this -1 and insert it where the x is, right? So that means it's 2 times a -1. So 2 times a -1 is a -2, right? And then I have this -3. So -3, right? If I have a -2, and just like the temperature gets 3 degrees colder, I now have a -5. You could always do that little part with a calculator if that confuses you. What if x is 0, right? X is 0, so 0 times 2 is 0. 0 minus 3 is -3. What if x is 1? 1 times 2 is 2. 2 minus 3 is -1, right? And then what if x is 2? 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. So that's number 1. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. If not, make sure the answers are there. Make sure it's nice and clear. Yours was probably even neater than mine, but let's go on to number 3. We have x plus 5. So if -1 is x, -1 plus a 5 is a 4, okay? I'm doing this a little bit faster. You might have to key these into your calculator. You might have to work them out. 0 plus 5 is 5. 1 in for the x. 1 plus 5 is 6. 2 plus 5 is 7. So that one's a little bit easier. We just had the x plus the 5. So good examples to have in your notes. And then if I gave you this, if you had x is this and y is that, you'd be able to, you had a graph in front of you, you'd be able to graph these, right? So if I said go ahead and graph these on a separate sheet of paper, you could graph them. And then you graph them perfectly, and then you connect them, and you would have answers. So we'll get into that in a minute, not with these problems, but we're going to be going there. That's where we're going to be going with this. So that's why it's so important to understand this first. All right, now I want you to take a half a page, your next half a page of notes, and I want you to copy this down. I want you to write what a linear equation is. A linear equation is an equation whose graph is a straight line. It's a line. It's not going to be a curve. It's going to look like this, okay? So the points on the line are solutions of the equation. So as we solve things, just like on the last one I talked about, if we know our x and we know our y, we can go ahead and we can graph them on the graph, okay? So write the definition down. Copy this graph down, or -1 and 0, 1 and all that. And if you want to, I do want you to copy this, but it might be hard to do. So what you might want to do is grab a piece of graph paper and do it, and then just tape it into your notes right there. But if you can't, it's not that big of a problem. You can easily make your own there, because you only have to go, it looks like, to 3. So you can easily go boom, boom, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, or -3, -1, -2, and -3. So you can make your own chart like that and then graph what you see up there. So go ahead and do that. Graph the x and graph the y. X is always first. Remember that, going back to 6th grade and 7th grade. We've already worked on it this year a bit. So go ahead and graph that. Take a minute. Unpause it. You'll have this in your notes, and then we'll start with another example. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and graph 2x plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to go and say, well, if x, all right, if x, I just like to pick, like -1 first. So we'll draw a little box. Go ahead and draw this with me. Draw this with me. Okay, we'll have our spot for our x. And then we'll have like what it says, y equals 2x plus 1. We'll have our equation there. Then we'll say what our y is. And then I like to just write, here's our x, y, just to make sure. Okay? So we'll go ahead and we'll start with a number. How about we start with, and again, if this isn't drawn yet, go ahead and pause it. You can always unpause. We'll start with -1. So if x is -1, just like we did on the last one, we have -2 times x. Well, -2 times a -1 is what? That is a +2, right? That equals +2. Well, the equation is or -2x plus 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So if x is -1, y is 3. The coordinates are -1, 3. That's what we're going to have to plot. Now this would go up here, right? So you would see, you would do your, if you wanted to, you just solve your work in there. I just solved this down there just so I had a little bit more room, but that's what that is. You can put it in a little box if you want. Let's go ahead and do the next one. I always like to have 0 on there because we want to see if it's going through the origin. So if x is 0, which is always easy because now we have this x, this 0 times -2 is 0, plus 1 is 1. So if x is 0, y is 1. So 0, 1 we would plot, right? And then what if x is 2? If x is 2, so 2 times -2, so you'd have 2, right, times -2 is -4. -4 plus 1 is -3. So we'd have our x is 2, and that is -3. Now, from there, we would graph it. The neat thing is, if I just click the button, it's going to graph it for me. So I'm going to click, and we're going to see how this looks when we graph it. Sorry. So ignore that. It's just doing the same box that I already did. But here's the graph. Okay? We have our -1 and 3, right? This goes right here. So -1, remember, over 1 up 3. So that's right there. 0 and 1 is right there. And -2, -3 is there. Obviously, we would then use a ruler and connect them. Okay? And see, when you connect them, boom, you see the straight line. We know it's a linear equation because the straight line, we draw the straight line through the point. So what you're going to want on this is going to have a ruler. You're going to have a ruler out. When you have your 3 points, you're going to connect them. You're going to make sure, and you're not just going to do it with your hands. You got to make sure it's a straight line. So you're going to need to use a straight edge to do that. So that's example number 1. All right, example number 2. I'm going to do this with you. Please do it with me. Write down the problem. Y equals 1/2 x minus 3. Then, while you're doing that, I'm going to draw a box. My x, my work, my y, and then my xy. Just so for good measure, I have the points. Okay, so again, if x is 0, sure. Let's call, I'm going to use 0 to, I'm going to start with -2, I guess. So -2, I'm going to have x be -2, x be 0, and x be +2. Okay? So I'll pick a couple points that make sense because then I could have one at the 0 and one above it and one below it to see what my straight line is going to look like. Okay? And so then I'm going to write the problem here, 1/2 x minus 3. So again, if I put the 2 in, the -2 for a half, so half of -2 is -1. So now I have -1 minus a 3. So what's -1 and take away 3 more? that's going to be negative 4, right? So I'm going to have negative 4 for y. So my x is negative 2. My y is negative 4. Okay, so far so good. Well, what if it's 0? Well, 0 times x is 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So my y is going to be negative 3. So 0, negative 3. Stay with me. Copy it down. Positive 2. So if we have 2, if x is 2, that's 2 times a half is 1. So 2 times a half, I'm just going to put it in as 1. 1 minus 3 is 1 minus 3. Negative 2. So you'd have 2, negative 2. All right, now I don't have the luxury of a graph paper here, but you might have some graph paper. Okay, so I can make this 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and plot this. So the first one is negative 2. I need it all the way to 4, I bet. So 4, 4, 4, 4. Okay, so negative 2, negative 4. So negative 2 is this way, down 4, about right here. So negative 2, negative 4 would be there. 0, negative 3 would be right here. And 2, negative 2 would be right here. Now, because I don't have a perfect graph, this would be my straight line. But since my graph's not perfect, you would have a perfect graph. I just had to sketch it. You'll use one of the graph papers to do that. So that's how I know I did it right. And I could even add more points if I wasn't sure if it was straight or not. I could keep going. All right, for the next part, I want you to add this to your notes right here, right where it says key idea. I want you to write everything you see inside what I circled. So go ahead and pause the video, write that, and then we'll do the next problem that'll help us talk about it. You're going to need this to solve the next set of problems. All right, now what we just wrote for notes is going to help us with this. So really, you're going to see what line to draw. So if you look at it, it says y equals negative 3. So you have this, and in my head, I know our negative 3 is about right here. So if negative 3 is about there, obviously I'm not going to draw up and down. It has to be, it says, over the y, so there's my horizontal straight line. Okay? So go ahead and get that in your notes. I'm gonna click the button to show the real one. That's how you can see it. They draw it nice and pretty. All right, so again, it's a horizontal line that passes through 0, negative 3. Boom. So you're graphing y equals negative 3. That's what you do. Graphing x equals 2 is now a vertical line because you're x, right? And it's got to pass through 2, 0. So the line has to pass through x equals 2, so it's 2, 0. So you draw a vertical line. Vertical obviously is up and down. Get these in your notes. This is going to help you with the next set because we're going to go ahead and do some on our own. All right, so number 1 on your own, I'm going to go ahead and do it with you, and then I'm going to have you do the next 2 on your own. So let me just get these out there. There's 2, there's 3. Okay, but we're going to do number 1 together. So again, we're looking at our x for looking at our y. We can do our chart. I'm just going to shorten the chart up, and I'm going to say, okay, if x is 0, so if x equals 0, so 3 times x is, or 3 times 0 is 0. So if x equals 0, y equals 0. So that would be an origin, right? That makes sense because 3 times 0 is 0. So if x is 0, y is 0, right? Now, what if I made x 1? So if x is equal to 1, it's 1 times 3 is 3. That means y is 3. If I made x equal to 2, if x is 2, 2 times 3 is 6. Y is 6. If I made x negative 2, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. So y is, or negative 6. What the heck? There you go. It was going crazy. So y would equal negative 6. Now you go ahead and you would plot that on a graph. Do the same thing in 2. Do the same thing in 3. And then we will show the answer. So this will take a minute to go ahead and do what I did with 1 and then plot it again. I could do a rough plot, but it doesn't pay. 0, 0 is right there. 1, 3 would be about here. Negative 2 or negative 6 would be about here. And 2, 6 would be about here. So you'd have this line going through the origin like that. Obviously, my line isn't that pretty because I'm not using graph paper. Yours will be exactly accurate. So I want you to graph number 1, and then do 2 and graph 2, do 3 and graph 3. Let's go ahead and pause this and do that and come back and check your answers. Now, you can go ahead and check your answers. Now, I know I didn't make you do 4, so don't worry about that. Don't look at that, but go ahead and look at them. How did you do? Do your graphs look like their graphs? And if not, look at it. Come see me. Show me your graph. Show me your plotted points. And 9 times out of 10, you plotted a point wrong. You did the math wrong up here. You know, most of the mistakes will come here when putting in an X and doing the math and doing a little bit of an error, and then your line ends up not being a line. You'll have like 3 points that would be a straight line, and the 4th one's like way down here or something like that. So when that happens, it's usually just an error in math. And really, if you graph it, you'll see it, and then you'll be able to fix it. All right, okay, that's all we're going to do with that. You're going to get to the homework. It's just a few problems. It's going to be page 146, 3 through 8. That's already on the board. But if you have your math book at home and you're watching this at home, you can go to 146. I'm only making you do 3 through 8. This video took a while, and I realize that, so I just want to do you do a few more problems and try to really understand this concept.